So welcome. Today is all about ADHD and relationships. And while I could talk forever on this topic, I'm going to just really try and succinct things today for you. But, on Monday, I did a masterclass all around ADHD and really forming a beautiful relationship with that ADHD part of you, right? And if you want to see the replay in that, please send me a message and we can send you the video. But today I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk to you about, ADHD and how it might impact the relationships in your life, right? If you just sat for a moment and thought about all of the relationships that you have had in your lifetime, whether that be with parents, with siblings, with friends, with family, intimate partners, work, I don't know, Betty at the bloody coffee shop. I want you to think about for yourself, where have you found, right, that there's been problem that has come up because of your ADHD, or because it's been misunderstood, or because there's been a something where that's kind of come between the two of you, right? Most ADHDers that I talk to, not all of them, but a lot of them talk about the struggle in that relationship dynamic with people, and really about having to manage the ADHD in a way that fosters supportive and healthy relationships. And the trickiness around not only doing that, but by also being able to kind of communicate that to a partner, right? A lot of the feelings that I notice come up for people, and I can definitely relate to this, is really in relationships, a lot of the time just feeling misunderstood, right? I know that sometimes, and it's a lot better now, but we'll get a comment thrown at us and we'll be like, no, that's not the thing. With me, it was always around, and still is, but there's a lot more understanding about my anniversary. I am really shit at remembering dates. I won't remember your birthday unless Facebook prompts me. I'm not going to remember my anniversary. I'm just really shit with dates. Even the kids' school excursions and things like that, they need to be scheduled into my diary, right? And at the beginning of the relationship, because it's something Joel was so good at, the misunderstanding was, you don't care. It's not important to you. None of which was true. It's just simply my brain had not stored that information. It was fucking gone, right? So the other thing that can start to happen in these relationships on both sides, I think, is frustration. It's one person's talking Japanese and one person's talking French, and, nobody's feeling understood and nobody's feeling heard. And what can come from that is resentment, frustration, overwhelm, all the things, right? And then what happens is there's this lack of understanding, sometimes even from the ADHD, about what ADHD is, what it means for them, right? And if you don't understand it, the other person definitely probably doesn't understand it. And then we're working from story about what's going on in the middle, not about what's fact, right? And this leads to so many problems in relationships. If you think about it, if you're the ADHD person, right, listening to this, I want you to just sit for a minute, even pause this and write down, how do I feel in the relationships when they become unhealthy in relation to my ADHD? Just pause it and write it down, what shows up for you? For me, a lot of the time what I felt was I felt criticized, right? And I felt really misunderstood. I felt like it didn't matter what I did. I could always hear myself in my head, I'm never going to get anything right. I'm always going to fuck it up. What's the point of even trying? These stories start to come up. And the other thing that I would start to feel in relationships is controlled, right? Because we all know us ADHDs, right? A lot of us, we have this rejection sensitivity. We can fall into people-pleasing mode. And so we can easily fall into this habit of others just controlling, commanding, or dictating to us what they think we should or shouldn't do, or what they think we are or aren't capable of, right? And that can just become so overwhelming for the ADHD, right? Now, let's flip this around because, in my opinion, like relationships are two people, right? Two people come together. You don't make a fucking whole. You're whole as you enter the relationship, right? 100%, 100%, and then you make fucking 200%. Yeah. But both of you bring different feelings, thoughts, perspectives into the relationship. And talking to my husband, to my kids who don't have ADHD, to clients who have partners or friends or colleagues with ADHD, you know, non-ADHDs, they talk about feeling really lonely in the relationship, right? They talk about feeling really ignored and disconnected and like their ADHD partner isn't present for them. They talk a lot about not feeling like their partner has the capacity to show up emotionally for them in the moments, and that things get personalized really fucking quickly, right? They get tired in their own minds of feeling like they have to take responsibility, right, for their partner's shortcomings, and use that term really loosely because it's not something I think is true. It's just something that gets perceived, right? And so we have two people on both sides of the coin experiencing overwhelm, experiencing stress, anxiety, maybe anger, frustration, depression, like insert any fucking thing there for you, right? And instead of coming together and working as a team to kind of navigate and manage ADHD, what happens is we have this dance back and forth about kind of like just blaming the other person, right? And not feeling heard, not feeling loved. And it's like the ping pong ball that just keeps going back and forth about who has it the hardest. Now, in all honesty, my opinion, both people in the relationship have it fucking hard. And though, what we forget is that there was something in the beginning that brought us together. There was something that you seen in that other fucking human that had you go, wow, you know, I want them to work in my building, or I want them to be in my world as my friend, or I want them to be my partner, or I just want to fucking get to know him. Like there was something in the beginning that was there. But when we create story and we get overwhelmed, you know, all of that comes in front of us and then in the middle of us and stops us from communicating. And the dynamic that is not always the place, but what I quite often see is one of parent-child mode, right? Where maybe one partner, generally the one without ADHD, starts to feel like they need to parentify the other person, or the boss feels like they have to parentify the ADHD employee, right? Or the friend feels like they need to parentify their other friend. And there becomes this power dynamic and this dance that takes place where one person shifts into gears taking all of the fucking responsibility. And the other person, though, gets into a space of feeling really, really fucking incapable. And so we have that dance going on with one person being fucking exhausted and the other person feeling like, oh, well, I'm never going to get anywhere. Like I'm just fucking hopeless. And if we stay in that dynamic, what starts to happen is for either person, you will start to create relationships in your life that mimic that in other areas. Now, this is a real fucking problem because this person up here taking all the responsibility, they are so not responsible for the whole entirety of the relationship or that other person. And then the person down here who thinks they're fucking incapable, they're just not, right? There are so many things that fucking ADHDs can do and accommodate for if we actually start to step up and feel like we can take the responsibility for it, right? If you are with somebody who has ADHD, no ADHD is the same, right? So you will find that you are exhausting in that dance of, I'm in charge because this is the thing I'm good at and you're really shit at it. But now, like, and we go back and forth, right? Now, what is so important in creating a beautiful, healthy relationship for you and your partner, for you and your boss, for you and your friend, for you and your child, for whoever it is to start getting really fucking clear on ADHD. Like really, really take the time to understand it. And not from a place of your brain, not just from a place of knowledge. Like we can all go and read books around ADHD, right? Like Google search ADHD, you will come up with a million fucking things. But to take the knowledge and have it help you understand you, understand your partner, understand where it's showing up and causing problem in relationship. That is so important and so powerful, because without that, we are going to keep seeing the relationship not for what it is, right? Like when we have the filters on and the stories going on, we don't see things for what they are. We see things for what we think they are. Like, really hear that for me, yeah? You know, what happens over time in a relationship, and I've seen this in mine, is we create story. So Joel's story, when I'm not remembering birthdays, I'm not remembering anniversaries, I'm not remembering the date that he set that we're going to go on a date night, the story that was so easily created in the beginning, not now, but in the beginning, was she doesn't care. I'm not important. I'm not worthy of her time. Like, do you see the story that starts to get created? And then on this side, when I'm over here going, I'm trying my fucking hardest, right? I'm doing the thing, I'm trying to write it down, but I'm still forgetting. The story that I create over here is, he doesn't understand. He doesn't appreciate me. He doesn't love me enough to make sense of my world, right? And then when we've got two stories going on, all of which really aren't fucking true, just miscommunication, that's when the barriers come up and the blocks come up. And like I said, we stop seeing our partner for who they are. We start seeing them for how we think they make us feel. Yeah? So what the fuck can help, right? Like if we're listening to this and we're in the hole and we're like, oh my God, like I'm noticing this in this relationship, help. There are some things that we can do. And when I say them, you might actually insert an eye roll and go, I fucking know that. But what we know and what we do aren't always the same thing, right? So hear me out. Like try not to get that glaze thing happening when I start going through some of the solutions, yeah? So the first thing that I want you to do is really sit down and talk to your partner, whether you're the non-ADHD or the ADHDer, about ADHD. Have a fucking conversation about it, right? And I want you to, in that moment, think of it as a third person in your relationship. Because if you come at it as a problem, the partner with the ADHD becomes the problem. And the partner with ADHD is not the problem. The way that is being managed in the relationship is the problem. And this is true for anything, like whether it's anxiety, stress, bipolar, schizophrenia, autism, like, or something that isn't, like maybe it's a chronic health condition, right? Like if we see the partner as the thing, the partner's the problem and we can't do anything with that. Whether as we can see our partner and then the ADHD can see our partner, and then we can put ADHD almost like on the table, get a third fucking chair if you need to, and start having a conversation around, where do we notice that ADHD comes up and causes a problem? Where do we notice that ADHD blocks our communication? Where do we notice that ADHD impacts how you feel or what your needs are or your needs getting met and vice versa? You know, where are we making ADHD mean something that it doesn't actually mean? Like start literally writing it down, having conversations around it, right? Actually looking at the things, right? And when I say things, I mean the things in your relationship that each of you are responsible for. You know, are they in the correct hands, right? Like me, if you put cooking in my hands, no one in my house is fucking eating because I can't follow a recipe. I get completely overwhelmed. I have a major fucking meltdown and I burn everything that I touch. Like the problem and the planning and the organizing, like it just overwhelms me, like literally completely. And so that task now has been given to Joel. Like I do not cook ever. Like when he goes away, sorry guys, like, you know, Uber Eats, right? They know that too. But it's starting to look at like, where do we need to be finding each other's strengths, right? Now that we've got an understanding on ADHD, great, cool. That doesn't mean that the ADHD gets a free pass and does fuck all. What that means is we need to look at, here's the thing ADHD is, What do you need to be taking responsibility for? Are you managing your ADHD? Have you talked, maybe if you take medication, about your medication? Are you taking it properly? Have you seen a coach or a psychologist, right? Are you kind of learning about yourself online? Are you checking in with yourself daily? Are you using strategies to accommodate the things that you struggle with? Like the ADHD human, take responsibility for your ADHD. And if you need support, so fucking ask, right? But within that taking of responsibility is a conversation with the non-ADHD around, hey, that expectation that you have on me, and this is just an example to remember everything, it's too high. I really, really work hard to remember, and I'm going to keep working hard to remember, but the expectation to remember every date and every birthday and every anniversary, it's too high, right? Like get clear on the level at which each of you are able to show up in the relationship. Because whenever you're coming into a relationship with expectations that are maybe too fucking high, right, you're gonna keep getting disappointed. But having conversations around what's your strength? What's your strength? You're now responsible for this. I'm now responsible for this. Write it the fuck down. Get a whiteboard, right? Get clear on your roles in the relationship so we can minimize that internal story and dialogue and shitty talk that has you disconnect. Yep. Now, the other thing that I want you to really think about is how you get rid of the really shit dynamic about parent and child. Like, it's just not fucking helpful. You know, what I like to talk about, and I think Mel Robbins, if you follow her, she talks about this as well, is checking in each day at what capacity each person is at. So like if I checked in, like yesterday, my capacity was about 20%. Like I went home sick, I felt really shit, right? And I said to Joel, I'm not well, I'm not okay, I'm working at this level. And he was like, well, I'm pretty tired, but I'm, about a 70%. So he was able to jump in and step up and do more of the things because we had a language around my capacity was lower. But likewise today, my capacity is a lot higher, so I can jump back in and do more of the things. And when we do that and we get an understanding about capacity, we can move through the dances each day and shift and pivot and support each other. So there's not one parent constantly, right, in the relationship. We don't want to parent in an intimate relationship. We don't want to parent in a friendship. We don't want to parent in a boss and employee relationship. What we want is two fucking adults who come together, who are able to communicate what is happening differently each day. So start getting in the habit of noticing, when are you taking charge, and have you actually checked in to see if this is something you need to take charge for? And if you haven't checked in, step back, take a breath and ask, hey, I was about to step in here and do the thing. Where are you at? Are you able to take charge here? What do you need from me to support you so you can take charge? Like start shifting the language rather than assuming how you need to show up. The other thing that I want you to do is I want you to check in, right? Like we do not check in with people, right? Like when you think about a friendship, how often do you check in with your friend and go, hey, I just want to check in how our friendship's going. I want to check in how you're feeling within the friendship. How often do we check in with our partner? Hey, I just want to check in about our relationship. How are you feeling this week? What do you need from me? What do I need from you, right? Or even with our boss sometimes, right? We quite often do the checking in at the crisis point, right? When there's a problem at work, when there's a problem in the friendship, when there's a problem in the relationship. But if we want to kind of disengage from it, they're always having to be problem and always having to be heavy and always having to be resentful or anxious or blah, 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 right? Then checking in is so powerful and so important. And I call them team meetings. Like if you've ever worked with me, you will hear me flog this point, right? You need to be having, like for me, daily with myself, team meetings. Sometimes they're 10 minutes, but I'm checking in, right? But with my partner, with Joel, Sunday afternoon, that's our time when we're checking in. That's our time when we're going, what worked this week? What didn't work this week? Where did the old stories show up? Where were things miscommunicated? Right? What do you need from me moving forward? What do I need from you moving forward? Right? If we don't come back in and reframe and recommunicate and kind of play with things and see them for what they are, then the trajectory of our relationship is going to get really skewed and off track. And each of you are just going to keep seeing your partner, your friend, your employee, whatever it is, as a fucking problem to solve that is getting too heavy. And at some point, the relationship will end. Or we just live in misery. Because let's face it, sometimes as humans, better the devil we know, even though it's fucking hard. And that's not a judgment or a criticism. It's just something I observe within myself. Right? So what I want you to really do, because every time I speak with you, I would love for you to be taking things away and practicing them and just getting curious in your life, you know, what is needed to really kind of shift the needle on living with ADHD so you get to have the life you want, right? So what do you need to take from this live today, right, to support you in creating healthier relationships? To support you in communicating differently with partners, with friends, with employees, to support you in taking more responsibility for your ADHD so that you can become the advocate for it, right? Because if you don't understand yourself, if you abandon yourself, if you're not the advocate for you, you're going to throw your needs out the window in a relationship when there's fear that somebody might leave you. And that is not helpful to the other person either. All right, so I hope something landed. As always, jump into the Living with ADHD Facebook group. If you've got some gold nuggets or there's something else that kind of sparked in your brain as we were talking, jump in there, let us know what's showing up for you, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye, everyone.